Hey everyone, welcome back. Joe here again, ScaleFreak.com, coming to bring you another upgrade for the RC4WD Trail Finder 2. Guys, this may not seem like much, but if you like the mud, this may be one of the most important things that you do with your truck. I've definitely learned this in the past little while, that this truck needs inner fenders. Oh my God, there's so much mud that gets built up inside this body, into the headlights, into the grill, everything. This guy here is RC4WD Z-S1192, the front inner fenders for this Mojave body. What's it gonna do? Well, pop the body off. They are going to fit onto here, which will then fit flush to the edge of the body, which will then keep you from flinging mud everywhere. I mean, recently I've been putting this thing into a lot of fun mud, and dude, I'm no holds barred, man. I'm going crazy. I absolutely love it. But when I've got my headlights installed, when I have all of that in here, this just gets rammed with mud. This gets rammed with mud. Even the windows inside, because I wasn't running an interior, rammed with mud. The servos, the transmission, everything rammed with mud. And it weighs the truck down quite significantly. Whereas if you got these things, you can, I mean, just for the most part, just rinse it off or hose it off or whatever it is that you want to do. It's a simple part. It's a cheap part. And yes, I know that there's a ton of tutorials out there on exactly how to make your own, but I wanted to get the actual RC4WD ones, the ones that were built for this kit. Now, funny enough, I waited until I put these shock towers on there, and I also moved these shock towers back. So I will have to do a little bit of a modification to it, but I'll show you how I'm gonna do that. So opening it up, simple enough. It's just a piece of Lexan, guys. It's really not that much to it. You can see on the side here, it's pre-dimpled as to where the body holes are going to be, 1, 2, and 3. So if I do this, it's going to fit on like right there. And it's going to rest on the edge of the chassis. So you'll have to take like the shock tower and stuff like that to get it all on there. And again, if you were running the stock system, this would actually screw on to the top of the shock hoop. So it would be completely internal onto here. And it would give it some rigidity, but I'm not gonna be running that system, so I actually might make this a little bit more flimsier. There's probably a good chance I'll destroy this in a short period of time, but anything I can do, anything to keep it from completely covering absolutely everything with mud for as long as I possibly can. So let me just check some scissors here and a hobby knife. So I've always been a big fan of the score and tear method. Especially with nice hard ridge lines like these, right? You can kind of see exactly where you are supposed to cut. I'm just gonna get myself a super sharp blade. When you're doing the score and tear, you always wanna use a brand new sharp blade. You don't have to push very hard as long as you're using a sharp blade. So one out, one in. Now I always wanna caution people when they're doing this, please, my God, please be careful with this. As I mentioned, you are using a brand new sharp blade. You don't ever want to push too hard, especially this Lexan here is very thin. It's just meant, it's not a body Lexan. It's, again, just meant for this. So it is quite thin. So be very, very gentle with your scores and don't poke yourself through and get your hand. So it's super easy. Just go onto the body line and you don't push hard. You're really just creating just a cut, or not even a cut, just an indent. You don't have to push hard. Do not poke it all the way through because then you're going to cut yourself. You're just scoring it so that when it's come time to tear it up, it will release quite easily. So I'll show you this. I'm just going to kind of cut into this a little bit, into there, and then I should be able to, as long as I did this correctly, see, just tear it open. Oh, Scott, there we go. So just like that. So that part, see, easy. You don't necessarily have to go through and cut it all and stuff like that. I was actually wondering what side the protective plastic was on, and I just figured that out. It's on the inside. So I know I'm gonna paint this from the outside anyway, so that kind of helps. So then, of course, with some of the trimming around the corner stuff, you can score and tear that stuff as well. I'm going to go through with the scissors and just get some of the finer details done. Give me a few minutes. I'm going to get these things cut out. both of these cut out, and I've got the holes just popped through with a body reamer real quick. You can see it's not a big part. There's a lot of extra plastic and stuff like that, but it's not a very large part. And of course, 2 screw holes are going to go onto here, and then the front screw hole is going to go into there. Now, normally you wouldn't have a revolver shacker that's resting up against that, so I do predict that that's going to give me a bit of a struggle. But also you've got those 2 scrolls in the back. I actually think with the modifications that I've done to this truck, I might run into a few different struggles, but that's the price I paid for doing some modifications, right? So let's kind of see exactly where I can go from here. Now you will notice that this doesn't exactly fit correctly. Again, if this was the stock tower location, it would just fit onto the tower like that. But of course the tower would be closer to the front, which would mean I would have less steering because of the front axle. And I would also have a shorter tower. So I've modified some things, so I need to make some changes. So I've got my marker here. If I kind of hold this up to the side, I can see here that I'm going to have to cut it out roughly about here. So I just made a couple little marks with the marker where I'm going to have to pop it out. Now, I do want to keep as much of the back as possible because I need that shock tower screwed in to hold this and give it a little bit of support. All I need to do is cut out a part of the top to be able to push it through. Now, that being said, I'm pretty much going to have to cut it out this far. So I've kind of made my marks. I'm thinking that that is what I will have to do. Let's do some chopping and see what happens. As anticipated, maybe I had to go a little bit bigger than I originally thought, but that's fine. Again, I've got a different setup than what it was originally made for. So now let's do an install and let's kind of see what happens. Let's see how badly or how well I butchered this. So it's going to be 5 screws coming out. Of course, as soon as I take off the screws from the shock tower, it's going to try to run away on me because that spring is under tension. Make sure I set the correct screws aside. They're all going back in. Oh, I don't want to lose that. So all 5 of those are out. So now this kind of fits on here. I'll poke the shock tower through and ta-da. So let's start to get some screws back into the chassis. So there's 1. Oh, they're all the same size anyway. So I'm good. I always make the screw holes in the Lexan just a little bit smaller so it can kind of thread into the Lexan a little bit. It's better than making it too big and then it shreds it, or that the screw just kind of fits through. So there's 1. And it fits on pretty snug here to the chassis. Whoops. I'll put the shock tower in now to kind of hold it into place so it's not jiggling around, because those screw holes are readily accessible. And it's still possible that I may have to do a few more little trim adjustments to this thing. Now that I've actually got it in the system, I could see here that I may have to trim around the shock a little bit more just to get it to correctly kind of line up. No? Oh, there's a twist tie in the back that's causing me a problem. Let's move that out of the way. You don't think about that stuff when you're putting the kit together, that one day a twist tie is going to give you a struggle. There we go. That lines up a lot better right there. Let me just get these last 2 funnel screws in. One into the transmission mount. And this one as well. So that is how that will fit on there. Now, not only did I modify, of course, the shock tower and the shock, so it makes a little bit See, I had to cut it on the top to be able to poke through that hole. But of course, I also have the shackle on the front. So you can kind of see that it makes a little bit of contact there, but it shouldn't necessarily be a problem. This is held on there nice. It's still flimsy, so it's still gonna move a little bit. And I need to trim around that screw a little bit. But what's gonna happen now is I put this on. And now you'll see, just line the body up as best I can to have the screws back in. You have an inner fender wall. So the body's not on, so it's gonna move around. It's meeting the inside of the fender here so that it won't splatter stuff all up into the inside. And it's protecting part of the chassis back here. So as you start to kick mud, you'll still kick mud into the back a little bit, but you will keep it from getting all up, slimed up underneath the bottom of the hood and all slimed up underneath the headlights and stuff like that. So it is gonna give you a little bit more protection. Yes, I did have to dig a bigger hole through here, but so be it, it is what it is. Both on, both mounted. I'll show you this. I got the body mounted back on correctly again, and you can see how they go in there. Nice and snug inside the body line, nice and snug up against the chassis itself. If it wasn't for the fact that I had to cut these gigantic, ridiculous holes in there, in order to fit these shock towers, it would actually be sealed up around there as well. So it would protect you against getting everything splattered up onto the inside. It does cover quite a good portion down here, so it will minimize the amount of splatter that's going to go onto your chassis. If you really wanted to, you could just get yourself some extra Lexan and just cover up that little space there. It wouldn't be too much, I guess. You could pretty much boat side the bottom of this thing if you had to with some extra Lexan. And that's how all that goes together. Again, if you were running the stock shock towers in the stock location, it would just fit into there and you wouldn't have had to do any of this extra work. It's just a direct bolt on. But because I modified the suspension, I did have to modify the wells a little bit. Now the next step, which I'll do at a later day, old hot rod, paint it black and put it back. So I'll make these things black. I might even spray it. I'm not sure if I'm going to use black paint yet, or I may use bed liner to give it that texture that I want. But this will help me keep parts of my truck at least a little bit cleaner. And I mean, when you paint them black, it actually looks a little bit more scale because the whole inside of your fender wall is going to be black like a real truck would be. And you don't have to see the motor or the servo or anything like that. So it works great. I know it does. I've seen it before. I might actually in the future, just for the fun of it, get another one and trim it less. Now that I know how much I don't have to trim out, I may actually get another set. They're cheap enough and then do it again from there. So guys, thank you very much for watching. If you're going to have a Trailfinder 2, I highly, highly recommend this upgrade. It doesn't seem like much. And again, if you wanted to, you could make a set for yourself. You just get your set like an old takeout container or something like that. Or I've seen people use like old butter containers and do it up. But I wanted to get the ones that are meant to fit this exact body. Maybe not my exact suspension setup, but still the exact body so that when I paint them up, they fit real nice and they're all snug up on here. Plus I will be adding on those rubber fender flares. So I wanted something that was made to clear those as well. So guys, thank you very much for watching. Click on the like, the subscribe, comment below, and of course, share this throughout your community. Maybe you know somebody who might want something like this. Cannot wait to get this truck all the way back together again, which does include a bit of a repaint. So I'm gonna get that done as well. Guys, thank you very much. Have an amazing night.